Good evening, everyone. We're all on mute, so thank you very much. You can have your video on if you want. Welcome to March. We're almost 1 year exactly into the pandemic. This is our standard, under normal circumstances, Peeps at the Peeb meeting. For those of you who are not from the Baltimore area, the Peabody Heights Brewery is located uptown in a neighborhood called Waverly, and it is located on the site of old Oriole Park that burned down in 1944. And we actually might have some, for those who come to the convention in 2022, there might be a reception there. So, excuse me, I will keep admitting people. The only news I have is, Jeff, I don't know if you heard, the Orioles have brought back some of the furloughed staff. So they're moving forward. Looks like, depending on what the city and the state allow, there will be some fans in the near future, but I'm not sure when we will know that or what the percentage will be. And I think all of you, if you're tuned to baseball world, saw that AAA baseball is being bumped by a month. It won't start until May 4th, and that's nationwide. They're going to use the AAA sites as alternate field sites for their parent clubs. Our next call after this will be the third Wednesday of March, which I believe is
April.
What is that, 2 weeks from now? The 17th, March 17th, and we'll have a talk. Mike Gimbel is supposed to talk to us on stats of the 2020 season and his projections for 2021. I won't keep yammering on, but I'm going to introduce Steve, who's here from Minnesota. I believe he's a member of the Untitled Chapter, and I will let him introduce himself and talk about his book. If you guys have any questions, you can put it in chat. And for any of you who are not on the Babe Ruth roster, or assuming you're SABR members, if you want to join it, just put your email address or your name in the chat, and I will add you to our roster so you can get information in the future. All right, Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Peter. And Peter, if you could monitor the chat, because I won't be able to see it here. And I'm going to go to full screen now. That didn't work. Peter, do you know what I did wrong? Can people see the screen?
I can see your desktop, but not the presentation view.
Okay.
What happens if you hit present? Should be someplace in the upper right-hand corner.
I can see the baseball bat.
But I can't see it on this end.
Yeah, all those computer screens there. Ted Williams swinging the bat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you see it now?
Yeah, it's there. Yeah,
There you go.
It's bigger now. It's bigger now.
That's it. Okay. Thank you. And one thing that Peter didn't mention is I have a neurological disease, and sometimes my speech is hard to understand. So if you have questions about what I may have said, just break right in and have me explain. I'll try and talk slow. But this is the cover of the book, and the publisher was McFarland. And the book is available now on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and other places like that. And one of the real enjoyments I got out of doing this book was able to talk and interview different bat makers and researchers and the SABR members. And so I enjoyed that. And by my professional training, I am a forester. And I always had an interest in wood. In my last 10 years or so, I focused on wood, and I always have loved baseball. So the fact that the wood and baseball came together and the bat was kind of something, was a natural outcome of that. That's how I got into this. In the chapters of the book are on the right there. And tonight I'm going to focus on chapters 5 and 6 in red. And these are the more technical chapters of the book. But most of the book is not that technical, but 5 and 6 are, and I'm going to try and go through that. In chapter 6, on the breakage of bats, the lead researcher was at the Forest Products Lab in Madison, Wisconsin. And the study was funded by Major League Baseball. And I had worked at that lab, or knew some of the people at the lab. So I was very interested when MLB started investigating bat breakage in chapter 6. And since I, again, was familiar with that, I was kind of drawn to that work. One thing I'm going to talk about is the broken bat issue. And to do that, we need to really understand some basic wood properties. And that's what I'm going to focus on today. And the properties that I'm going to talk about are not too many of them, but the 3 different surfaces of wood, and then the species, the weight, and the density. And that's what I'm going to cover. And again, if you have questions, Peter will monitor the chat for me. And if you have trouble understanding me, just break in and ask me to repeat something. The 3 surfaces of wood can be illustrated right here with a diagram. The radial, this is where we're usually taught to hit the ball. And the tangential, this is where the trademark. Is anybody here to play ball in the 60s or so like I did? All we have were wood bats, and trademark was always on the surface. And we'll put a bat in here to illustrate that a little better. This is not a curve here, it's just a distortion due to the photograph. But the A side, the radial, can be seen here. It's on this side of the bat or the opposite side. That's the radial. And this tangential B surface is right where the trademark is. B, and the center cross section of the trade, it's on the end, or the end of the handle. And for many people, it might just be easier to look at a block of wood and you can see the B surface. That's what their trademark normally is. And the A is where we're taught they hit the ball. And the end of the bat would be up here on the cross section. So those are the three surfaces of wood. And that will become apparent why it's important in a minute. Now, Peter, I had to put this in since this is a Babe Ruth chapter. And I wanted to start with him because he's a good illustration of Newton. Long ago, Newton said force equals mass times acceleration. And Babe Ruth, he focused on mass. You want to impact, you want to increase the force on the ball, you could do these two things, mass and acceleration. And the Babe focused on mass. He had some white ash bats, some hickory bats, and to give you an idea, it's reported that some of his bats were nearly 70 ounces. And most players today, the weight would be about 33 ounces. So Ruth had roughly double the weight sometimes. 40 plus ounces is more typical. But he focused on this mass, and he focused on a lot of his wood was like hickory, which is one of the densest, heaviest hardwoods we have. And you can contrast that to this guy, Ted Williams. In my book, I mentioned that prior to Babe Ruth, there was the dead ball era, then there was the lively ball era. And I kind of labeled it myself. I called Williams was the start of the bat speed era. If you remember that formula, force equals mass times acceleration, Williams focused on acceleration. He believed getting that bat speed was the key to hitting the ball. And he focused on white ash. Oops. Sorry about that. White ash. And the bat makers, for many years, they experimented with different woods, but they found that ash was the choice. It was dense enough, but it was light enough to swing fast. And that's what Ted Williams focused on. So white ash, a lighter bat than Ruth, and the density of the bat, white ash was strong, but it was flexible. And I put this picture in because I thought that if you think about, say, the automakers, big companies, you have Ford and GM and other big makers, And the same was true with baseball bats. There were a few firms that really dominated the market. Ocean Bradby, Adirondack, Spalding. But the status quo changed when this guy came around in about the year 2000. And this is Sam Holman from Ottawa, Canada. And he started a small company up there. And he made his bats out of maple. He figured he couldn't really improve on the ash bat. He made them out of maple. And he went to a spring training one year, and he was introduced to a player by the name of Barry Bonds. And Barry Bonds used his maple bat and maybe some other things, which we won't talk about here. But Sam Holman was credited by Sports Illustrated with the rise of what they call the boutique bat making companies, small 1 or 2 man shops. Going to do a little comparison of maple versus ash. And I'll talk about the ring porous, diffuse porous business in the next slide. But one thing about maple, it was not ring porous like ash. And because of that difference, it's more difficult to see the grain on maple. It's also not as flexible as ash, but it is stronger and it is harder than ash. And if you look at these pictures here, this is like an ash bat. And these little holes that you see, you can think of those as drinking straws. And they go from the bottom of the tree to the top. So you go out in your front yard and water your tree, a shade tree, whatever it is. It goes, the water and other nutrients will go up these pores. And on ash, they're large and they get small. And you contrast that to maple. And I should say this over here is called ring porous because it's 1 ring, 2 rings, 3 rings, 3 years old. And I think many of us have counted rings on a tree. But over here in maple, all the little pores or drinking straws are spread out evenly. And you only have this little line here. 1, 2, 3. And it can be difficult to see that and see the grain on the bat. So again, this is called ring porous, very easy to see the grain. And this is called diffuse porous. So we've got ash on the left, maple on the right. So that's why I had this. Maple is not ring porous, so it's more difficult to see the grain. And in the early 2000s, this picture was not taken in the early 2000s, but it illustrates the problem of shattered bats. Not just broken bats, but bats that broke into 2 or more pieces. And that became a real problem. for players, umpires, coaches, as well as fans. It's an old newspaper clipping from the early 2000s, and you can see the flying bat in the stand here. So in the spring and summer of 2008, Major League Baseball took action, and they formed a study team, and that team leader was a wood engineer in Madison, Wisconsin, with the Forest Products Lab. And the Forest Products Lab is the only federally funded wood and paper research lab in the country. And they worked on projects like postage stamps, making them more recyclable with the glue, rather than licking the stamps. Now I have the glue. They worked on wood trusses a lot, and now they've worked on baseball bats. So just as a reminder, this is a radio where we would typically hit the ball, and this over here is the tangential, where the trademark was. And most bat makers today, this is what they get at their bat making firm company. They buy these pieces of wood. They're about 38 inches or so long and about 2 3/4 inches in diameter. And these are called billets. And long ago, most bat makers made these billets. But today, most bat makers buy the billets. And I've even visited one billet maker, and that's all they do. They make billets for Major League Baseball. So the bat maker gets the billet in, and then he makes the bat. Now the problem came in to Major League Baseball and other places when a billet was cut at an angle. And remember, maple, you couldn't see the grain. So you didn't know these billets were kind of at an angle. And that was one of the problems that the study team came up with. They came up with 9 recommendations. And the important one was that slope of grain. And easy to see grain is key in baseball, but you can't see the grain very well in maple. And if you have a bat that's not cut straight to the grain, you have a weaker bat. And maple grain is harder to see than ash grain. So then MLB was faced with, how do we identify a maple compared to ash? If it's hard to see, how are we gonna find it? So they came up with a study team did. They put a round sticker on the bat handle before they stained it. They put the sticker on, then they could pull the sticker off afterwards. And the little dot here in the middle is ink or dye. And that ink or dye would follow the grain. and a good illustration. Hopefully you can see this. This happens to be one of the bat makers that supplies bats, Major League Baseball, dovetail bats. But if you look right there, you can see the dot and the die. And that die is following the grain. And if it's more than 3% off from a perfectly a straight line, then that bat is not used in Major League Baseball. So any bat you see now that has a painted handle, you'll see that dot if it's on a maple bat. So in your home watching a game on TV, or you go to a game in person and you see a handle of a bat with a dot on, you know it's not an ash bat. It's probably maple. The other big wood species in Major League Baseball, up and coming, the species is yellow birch, but the yellow birch is also has a diffuse pores on it, so it's like maple. And right now, there's about as many birch bats in Major League Baseball as there is ash bats. Maple is about 80% today. And when maple came in, I kind of labeled it in the book as the maple bat era. Though we had the dead ball, lively ball, bat speed era, and what I call the maple era. The other thing that it did was, again, old timers, you might, this our trademark was on the tangential side of the bat, and we were always taught to hold their trademark up. Well, I found out through testing that actually any wood, that side of the bat is stronger than the other side. So on maple, and birch, they rotated the trademark 90 degrees. So where we used to hit the ball is now the trademark side of a maple and birch bat. And they hit the ball traditionally what we call the trademark side, because it's stronger wood there. And they left the ash trademark where it's always been. I just want to say that I covered some very techy stuff tonight, but the book really is a non-technical. It's for non-techies, so I hope that this clarifies a few things on the bats and the breaking up and the trademark placement. And I'm gonna stop now and take any questions you might have. And we can go back to full screen and do that. Or Peter, do you want me to do the trivia right now?
Sure, if you're ready, go right ahead.
Okay. This is also in the book. And there's a reason for it, but this is a trivia question. And I guess the winner gets one of my books. So, does anybody know who this player is?
It's Harry Walker.
That's right. He was a 1947 National League batting champion. And he was also a manager. But one thing I wanted to point out was the bat. You see this color? A two-tone bat. Harry was supposedly touring the Louisville Slugger plant, and they had a bat in a vat of stain, and they were stirring it, the stain, with a bat. And Walker didn't know that, and he pulled the bat out, and he kind of liked the color. So today, if you order a Walker finish on your bat, this is what you get. Plain handle and a colored barrel. That's called the Walker finish. And Peter, if you can get the name of that person and get their email address, I will send them a copy of the baseball bat.
Okay. Ryan or I will email you his address.
Okay. I'm gonna quit the screen sharing and take other questions.
Peter, I just sent it to you. I just sent the email address, so you can send it to Stephen. Thank you,
Okay.
Stephen.
No problem.
Okay. I'm trying to stop the screen sharing. Oh, there it is. Stop share. How's that?
Looks good.
Okay, are there other questions?
You're good.
I heard something, but
Good job, buddy.
Anybody have questions for Steve? Hey, Steve, when did the book come out? Last year?
it came out in, yes, the summer of last year,
Okay.
Can I see?
late July.
Can I see?
No.
Got a question.
Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
When playing Little League back in the 50s and 60s, I remember that one of the things that coaches told you to do most often was to label up.
Correct.
And that has to do with where the label is placed. And I'm very surprised to hear that that has switched 90 degrees now to the other part of the mat, if you choose maple or birch, as you were saying. And so do you know
Right.
when that expression ever came?
Well,
Go ahead. I won't interrupt you. Go ahead.
no, I was just gonna say, the label up, if you use an ash bat many, many times, if you hit the ball on the label, the rings would come apart. You know, one layer of bat would kind of peel off. I got a good picture of it, and I wish I could show it to you, but it didn't really break the bat, but the bat was damaged. If you knew you're only going to use the bat one time, let's say, hitting it on the trademark side would be the best for an ash bat.
But wouldn't that also sting your hands?
Did you win the book?
No, not necessarily.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. But we always thought that was wrong, to hit the ball on the trademark and you would break the bat. But
Right.
research has shown
No, it's
that is the strongest side of the bat.
Wow. Okay.
But ash bat, if you repeated the bed ball contact on that bat,
And
would
that's the only reason.
cause the rings to separate on the bat. But so that's why they recommended hit the ball on that radial surface, the one we're taught. But for maple, they decided to orient the bat differently and put the trademark on the side we used to hit the ball. Of course,
That's
when you're a
interesting.
player, you can hit it where you want to hit it.
I didn't know that, and I play baseball in a senior league, and it's an all wood bat league. We can't use any metal. I didn't know that about maple, and so I've been hitting I've been labeling up still. I didn't know it was smarter to have the label facing. So this has been very helpful. And in fact, I wondered why my bat was so weak. I could barely get it over the second baseman.
Well,
I'm part of that problem, I admit.
if you use an asteroid a lot and you hit on the label, you'd eventually have problems. But if you're just going to use it once or twice, that's supposedly the strongest surface.
No, I've switched completely to maple now.
Okay. Well, and for maple, they've already rotated the bat for you.
Well, if we were doing this in person, I would have you autograph the little dot on my bat.
Okay. Well, again, if you use a maple bat, they've already taken that into account.
Right, right. Okay.
At least, well, I should say at least the major league level. I'm not sure. At the professional level, yes. I think it's true also for below the professional level.
Say that again. What is true below the professional level?
Well, in the for the professional level bats, they have already rotated the trademark, but below professional level, I am not sure. Does
Wow.
that make sense?
Yeah. How would you determine if your bat is completely, shellacked or painted and you can't see the grain? Is there a way to determine which way the grain faces?
Does your bat have a dot on the handle?
Yes, it does.
And whatever side that dot's on, that would be the side to hit the ball on.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, those pitchers are in trouble now that I know that.
Yeah, there you go. Are there other questions?
Yeah, you had
Go ahead.
you had mentioned that Babe Ruth used up to a 70-ounce bat. I think I heard at least up to maybe 52, but I've never heard up to 70.
I heard or read up the using strength training, that he would use that. But what I've read, he used to use occasionally 70 ouncer. But normally, like I said, it was probably in the 40s, maybe 50.
And you knew what this thing is, right? You see that?
Yeah, yes.
Before they made the billets, I guess.
Yes.
I got it at the Louisville Slugger Museum. They gave them out to everybody.
They probably cut that bat up a bit to give you that souvenir.
Yeah, well, I mean, they had a whole barrel of these things. They were just giving it to everybody.
Are there other questions?
Any other questions? Steve, I'm letting you know, my brother is also a forester. He works for the U.S. Forest Service, and right now he is in upstate New York, near where they had the Olympics.
Okay,
So he lives in Saranac Lake.
all right. He's in the heart of the good growing region. The basal baths,
Yeah,
the ash and the maple.
he went to he got his bachelor's in forestry science at Penn State.
I did too.
All right, good to know. I have a cat named Nittany, in case anybody cares.
Okay.
Well, I have another question, Steve.
Go ahead, Bruce.
It seems like we've only discussed maple, white ash, and birch. And yet there are hundreds of trees with various densities. And it seems like, have we really exhausted all the possibilities of the best bats for this sport?
Every year, Major League Baseball, through that study team, put together a list of woods that are approved. And right now, I think there are like 8 or 10 woods approved that you can use in the major leagues. And the white ash is one of them, yellow birch, sugar maple, red oak, a couple of Japanese ash trees. And I can't think of all of them, but
What about it?
of all the trees, they narrowed it down to about 8 or 10 or so.
Well, it makes me wonder about if a guy like Ruth is strong enough to have a 48-inch bat regularly, why wouldn't you want an even stronger wood, denser wood like cherry or teak or something like that? Wouldn't that work?
Well, one of the problems is a real heavy wood. Most people can't swing it fast enough against a 90 to 100 mile per hour fastball.
Right. Well, I can't do that. I can't do that with a plastic bat, but I'm just saying theoretically.
I say it again then.
Well, I'm just wondering because some of these woods, and I guess what you're saying is the density makes them so heavy that they're no longer practical.
Right.
But the advantage is, you know, if you've got a little leaguer who's always breaking his bat, the solution for society has been to give him an aluminum bat. It seems like one of the other solutions would be to give him something that's made out of birch or teak. I can't think of other hardwoods. truly dense woods, it would last a long time.
And in Little Lake, you could probably do that. But I'm not sure why there's only 10 woods approved. All I can think of is that things like teak and other very dense woods, they're just not practical. I forgot to mention on that list is hickory still.
Hickory, right, you mentioned that. Okay. Interesting.
But most people can't swing those heavy woods, so most of them are not even considered.
Right.
Are there other questions?
Anybody else? We had a pretty decent crowd for a Wednesday night, so thank you guys. I also wanted to mention for those who tuned in or watched, and now they're online, you can watch them in reverse, the Babe Ruth Museum presentations last week for the virtual bash. Was very successful, first time being online. Actually, in terms of net profit, it was the most successful one they've had in close to a decade. That's thanks to sponsors, number one, and also those who donated or bought one of the items at auction. So we're very happy for the museum, considering they're our partners in baseball here in Baltimore. So our next call will be the 17th. And then we'll see what happens with opening day in terms of, I know in Philadelphia, they're allowing fans. That's official. I forget what percentage. They just haven't announced here in Maryland what's gonna go on or when it's gonna start. I have a feeling that the state will agree to something, but then the city mayor might overrule it. So.
Seems to me I might have heard Philadelphia 8,000 they might allow in.
Something like that. So.
Can I give a little update on our Toledo Mud Hens and AAA baseball in Ohio?
Go ahead, Tom.
Sure. As it was mentioned earlier, the AAA is pushed back a little bit. So a couple of emails coming out of the Mud Hen front office. Currently, the stadium seats around 9,000 people. So if the games were to start with the April date, roughly around 1,500 people. So in a row of about 30 seats, tickets are available to, on a priority basis, full season ticket packages. So that would be about 70 games. And other packages, like 18 games, weekday, weeknights, holidays, weekend type. And my wife and I fell under the smaller package. So in a row of 30 people, no more than 6 people, and it has to be, you have to have something in common. So like from the same family or the same group that regularly has tickets together. So if your group would sit in the middle row, part of the middle row, there would be people behind you at the ends and people in front of you on the ends. So approximately 6 feet between strangers or among strangers. Now, since our season is moved to May, the Mud Hens speculated that they could have up to 30% occupancy. So that brings in another, couple of thousand people. So all of that is under condition that the COVID would have a better, chance of meeting herd or most people would be vaccinated. So it's still a roll of the dice, and I imagine all the major league teams are going to have similar protocols.
So will AAA pick up the schedule as it was in May, or were they skipping April? Or
What they have done, they've added in July two dates with approximately 3 games. I think it's something like the 14th and the 16th. They've added games to that. So they practically kept the same schedule for the 140, but they just jammed in a few extra games to make it a 120 game season. So I don't know what that does for July with that, 6 home and 6 away setup that they have. But that I know that helps with selling of the tickets and planning of the tickets. And earlier in the year, we received an online printout that we had to put in our preference for we have 18 games. So we had to put in our preference for which games we could attend, not guarantee that we would be able to attend all 18 games. But I was confident that since they're making the priority of season ticket holders and other packages, we were pretty sure to get 18 games in. We had originally a Friday night package. So according to their new rules, it would be 18 games throughout the year, any day that they could, manage to give us tickets. But unfortunately, we opted out for 2021. And I think that was a good move since they're shortening the season. Thanks.
All right, guys. Well, good talking to everybody. Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated your visiting us here from Duluth.
And thanks to everybody listening. I
Okay.
appreciate it.
Absolutely. I think you guys know that it looks like August of 22 is going to be the national convention. They don't want to move it again. The Orioles do have those dates. I did send it to the Orioles vice president and some of the people in the front office. So I will, they'll do their best to make sure that there will be home series during that time. Obviously MLB makes the schedules, but at least they can, do their best to push for it. And if Bruce doesn't have anything to mention, I think we'll call it an evening.
Beyond that, we're good.
We thank you all again. I know the SABR Analytics Conference is next week. I don't know if anybody's attending that. I opted out this time. I've never been to it. I considered going, but since my wife and I are looking to buy a new house, she said no.
It's all virtual this year.
Yeah, but there's still a cost though, right?
Yeah, but it's much
much
cheaper.
lower.
Yeah, I think it's like $70, $75. I've never attended. My wife and I had planned, and this is, it's better than driving or air in a hotel, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada. So for $75, I can get a feel what it's like. And if we
Well,
want to
let
go
us
next
know,
year, we
Tom.
can do that. Yeah.
I'd like to find out. I'm sure it'll be available online after it's over as well, since
They also have that SABR 19th Century in April. And that's Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And I think that registration is about $35.
Yeah, I might do that one, maybe,
Yeah.
if she lets me. I'm going to be in Louisville this weekend, taking my cousin, or excuse me, my nephew, Jeff, the one who I brought to the conventions, taking him to the Louisville Slugger Museum. And the folks at the Pee Wee Reese chapter are very enthusiastic and are going to give us tours around town and all that kind of stuff. So there's SABR family all over the United States if you just reach out to the right people.
Louisville is the only site that I believe SABR had a national convention at a minor league park. And
I
that,
think Buffalo might have been one other time.
yeah, but that goes
Albany.
back probably 20 years or so.
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
Albany,
25.
Albany, New York also had one.
Albany,
Yeah.
okay.
They're all in the beginning years.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were nice to me at the stadium. I walked in the gift shop and there was a door to go out to the stadium, and they let me go out there to take some pictures. So that was, I can't remember how long, maybe 10 years ago, but they let me go out into the stadium area even though there wasn't a game.
Yeah,
There
we're
was a statue of Pee Wee Reese outside.
getting a tour of the Bats field, thanks to the folks in SABR Louisville. So, so I'll let you guys know about that at our next call.
Yeah.
And hopefully things start getting better. Hope people are getting their shots. And I'm still waiting, but you know, it's Maryland, it's Baltimore City. Let's put it that way. You know, stay well, and you know, it's spring training. So if there's nothing else, there's that.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
All right,
Talk to
guys,
you
have a
later.
good night. Take care, Steve.
See everybody.
Bye.